Hello, America, and hello, nuclear aficionados around the world. Welcome to Nuclear.com Daily. This is the last day of 2013. It's, Tuesday, December 31st. I'm Steve Schulin of Nuclear.com, and it is a pleasure and an honor to be part of your day. I hope you have a fantastic new year coming up. Those of you listening in via podcast or on YouTube, please know that you're welcome, wanted, and encouraged to come join in live every Monday through Friday, starting at 12:05 p.m. Eastern Time. You can join in just like a conference call. The number is 724-444-7444. You'll be asked for a call ID. That's 95348#. Come one, come all goodwill to Nuclear.com Daily. Let us reason together. Well, one of the things that we've been doing every day here for some weeks now is an exclusive front page review. And nuclear's on the front pages every day. I don't recall a single day where there hadn't been front page stories about nuclear. Like today, there's a few items around the world about Iran and the talks that began yesterday. Like the Jerusalem Post has a story, a New Year's related story on their front page about Iran ringing in a decisive new year in the Middle East. Although applying deadlines is rare in diplomacy, the U.S. expects results in 2014 on both a nuclear Iran and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, is the subhead. Well, I see the next paper over is about abortion in Israel, and there's a recommendation by somebody in the government, an 18-member public committee, recommending that the government finance abortions. You know, my motto here at Nuclear.com is I'm pro-life, therefore I'm pro-nuclear. And a lot of people that I talk with in the pro-life community, they have a strong religious grounding. Thank heavens we live here in a country where our founding documents, our organic law says that our rights come from God, not from man. And I'm disappointed to see. Anyway, a lot of those folks support Israel from a biblical basis. It says if you don't support Israel, you're in trouble spiritually. And I point out to them that there's some parts of the Bible that it seems to me like where God is saying Israel, he's not talking about this national Israel government. He's talking about the body of believers. But anyway, I'm disappointed to see Israel wanting the government to pay for abortions. And I often ask folks who say that we need to support Israel because of the Bible, I say, would you give a whit of support politically to a candidate here in the United States who wanted the government to subsidize abortion? If not, why in the world would you apply a different standard on another nation that does subsidize abortions? Let's see. Out of India, a mention on the front page that Iran resumed talks with world powers in Geneva, a step towards an elusive nuclear deal. Yeah, it's elusive, huh? The deal may not be elusive, nearly so as the results. The California newspaper says that change, voters are gunning for change in Southern California, and they note that Southern California Edison decided to shut down their nuclear plant, and that even big business is looking for change. I don't think they were looking for it. They got some lemons, and they're trying to make the best of it for the shareholders by saying that it's the ratepayers who ought to be paying for their mismanagement. Another nuclear power story in the front news: USA Today, their New Year's edition, covering both today and tomorrow. They have a story about climate change, and I'm not surprised to see USA talking about climate change as if we need a big fix. And that's in their title: In Search of the Next Big Fix to Combat Climate Change. Look, don't call me a climate change denialist, all right? I think that the phrase climate change is actually redundant, because the definition of climate includes change. That's what climate does, is change. So don't say that I'm a climate change denier. I am not a climate change denier. What I deny is giving any whit of credence to the shoddy science that underlines this CO2 climate alarmism. The idea that anthropogenic climate change is such a risk that we need to make wrenching changes in the way people live their lives. We need to limit access to carbon-based fuel use. This is a lie. It's full of exaggerations and other lies. That's what I deny. I deny the lies. I do not deny climate change, and I resent the people of apparent bad will who use this denialist language as if I was denying the Armenian genocide or the Nazi genocide of the Jews, the Armenian genocide by the Turks. I am not a denialist. I'm a realist. In 2000, I'd always been interested in climate and energy. Back when I was a schoolboy in high school and college, the big emphasis was on global cooling due to particulate air pollution from coal plants. Sulfur dioxide was said to be so steep that it would reflect incoming solar radiation back away from the Earth. And there was much concern about the cooling trend that was observed in the back through the early 70s. And I kept reading. I subscribed to the journal Science as a young man because that was where the coverage was of the radiation and human health effects. Research, that was a great place. They covered the beer committees, BEIR, biological effects of ionizing radiation, which in the 70s were quite hot and heavy news. Anyway, I would read the other energy and environment related stuff published in that journal, and occasionally they'd have a piece on climate science. Climatology was sort of a backwater in scientific world back then. And I'm quoting University of Wisconsin professor of climatology when I use that word about a backwater. But it's been coming more and more to the forefront. Now climatologists are acclaimed internationally, quite prestigious. And part of that is because they've done, or some have done, a tremendous job in public relations, making people think that climate change is such an avoidable thing. We could avoid it if only we changed our behavior. If only we picked winners when it comes to energy supply based on their carbon footprint. And they're teaching our children this. Have you followed this Common Core curriculum that so many states are implementing? Well, the curriculum is written by apparently folks who buy this CO2 alarmism, and they're teaching it to our children as fact that anthropogenic climate change is a moral imperative to avoid, and that requires virtually eliminating our carbon dioxide footprint. when it comes to energy use, especially, it's a lie. It's a damnable lie, and I oppose Common Core because this is a good example of the type of abuse that can come from national standards on this type of thing for teaching our children. I love having a national standard on teaching American history, teaching math, teaching English, even teaching the scientific method. But when it comes to teaching them the propaganda of this CO2 alarmism, I say nay. And the final front page story today is about an emergency planning drill statewide, state of Montana. Nuclear incident drills. They expect to bring in 1,000 people from out of state. Of course, they have nuclear weapons there in Montana as well, so it's not just a drill about a truck and a cask kind of an accident. It could be a nuclear weapons related accident. I love the quote. They say it's going to cost like $700,000 just to pay the per diem for the 1,000 people coming in a day. But I love the quote that they end up the story with. Our motto is that you don't want to meet the person you're going to be working with at the disaster. That is, you don't want to wait to meet them until there's a disaster. We know what to expect, how to talk their language. They know how to talk our language. The spokesman said the director of the Montana Department of Emergency Services said nothing in the world like on-the-ground training. Good point. All right, that's the front pages. Let's take a look at the Nuclear Energy Institute's email today. Came out a few minutes before showtime. Their top story is an opinion piece. Ex-EPA official says nuclear energy helps provide a clean electricity supply, with a link to the Montgomery, Alabama newspaper, The Advertiser. Southern Company and the Tennessee Valley Authority will increase their use of natural gas and emissions-free nuclear energy because these sources, quote, offer the best combination of lowering both air emissions and consumer costs, writes J. Winston Porter, former assistant administrator of the EPA. Natural gas and nuclear energy are the right choice to modernize and clean up our electricity supply, he argues. Now, one comment. I went on a harangue about CO2 climate alarmism. That doesn't mean that I think that coal-fired generation um, is something that we ought to be lauding. Um, I think it's a necessary evil. Um, Coal. I read the story yesterday by George Monbiot, science environment writer out of the Guardian, uh, where he gave some excellent, a whole laundry list of examples of adverse health effects linked to coal-fired plant emissions. And I agree with him. All right. Next from NEI, experts say non-proliferation will not be helped by a hardline approach. A congressional proposal that would restrict future U.S. peaceful nuclear cooperation only to countries that agree not to enrich uranium or reprocess plutonium is likely to be both ineffective and counterproductive, writes Matthew Bunn, former White House advisor on non-proliferation. And the co-author was Fred McGoldrick, formerly of the Departments of Energy and State. Quote, legislation mandating a legal ban on all new civil nuclear cooperation agreements would do little more than freeze the United States out of new nuclear markets and reduce its non-proliferation influence, they argue. Interesting points. All right, small modular reactors in the news. The Tri-City Herald, hometown paper of Hanford, Washington State's Tri-City Development Council will solicit bids on a study to investigate the benefits of building a small modular reactor at the Hanford site. The study will examine 3 potential sites. Headlines only, two of these, one from Energy and Capital newsletter, thorium as an alternative to nuclear fuel, and a story out of a Ukrainian newspaper, the Kiev Post. U.S. and Russia extend program for used fuel retrieval to 2024. More international stories. Reuters. More nuclear plants needed in South Korea by 2035, officials say. South Korea should build up to 5 nuclear power plants between 2025 and 2035 to keep the country in line with its nuclear energy goals, said government officials. Separately, the Energy Ministry is planning to spend more than $1 billion by 2017 on safety measures at existing nuclear facilities. I would like to see safety culture brought to the forefront in South Korea as a prerequisite to moving ahead with plans to build new nuclear plants. This scandal about parts being certified fraudulently as being nuclear grade is quite troubling to me. Next, Fukushima cleanup. Reuters, problems reported with job recruiting for Fukushima cleanup. Japanese authorities have made multiple arrests in an investigation of illegal subcontractor hires related to cleanup operations at Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant. Quote, we're taking it very seriously that these incidents keep happening one after another, said a spokesman for a construction company whose subcontractors have been investigated. And finally, headline only, International Business Times, no damage reported after earthquakes hit near Fukushima. Well, that's it for the day. Thanks for joining in. I hope you have a great rest of the week and a most happy New Year. Those of you in the nuclear biz, make it another safe one, my friends. This is Steve Schulin signing off for Nuclear.com Daily.